So Disney is making a new movie, and I gotta give props to them. At least it's a new IP. I can't believe it, but they are actually making something new. So it's not a remake, it's not a sequel. Astonishingly, they have managed to find some level of creativity, just enough so that they can create this very predictable thing. Now, I had the bingo list before I watched it. I know it's cringe to point out, but I was perfectly certain that the villain is going to be a cisgender, heteronormative, straight white man. You know, like the CEO of Disney, like he is the villain. Probably a self-insert, I assume. It is interesting that you're not allowed to point these things out. But if they were to make a villain that is a black man in the ghetto who steals stuff, that is racism. Stereotypical representation. Look, if you want the stereotype, the straight white man is the villain. That is the allowed stereotype by the Democrat Party, by the Walt Disney Corporation. Everything else is not allowed. And by the way, you know, all jokes aside, I generally like don't care, but like every now and then I get to see a script that leaks. And I remember like watching the script from the Powerpuff Girls, and this is literally how they cast things, right? So they will say the Powerpuff Girls can be played by any race. So Blossom, which in the cartoon was white, in the TV show she can be literally anything. She can be black, she can be Asian, she can be an Eskimo, like that doesn't matter, right? Like literally anything, best actress for the job. The only character that had a designated race, literally like the only character in the Powerpuff Girls TV show that was canceled and was never released, was the villain. The villain was the son of Mojo Jojo, whose father was murdered by Blossom, and the villain had to be a straight white man. It was the only part in the script that had a specific race. And it makes sense, right? Because these movies, they are designed to not offend the left while offending conservative as much as possible. Like, they are outspoken about the fact that they want conservatives to feel uncomfortable, so that you go on Twitter, you complain about these things, and you have other twats that are telling you that you're wrong and you're racist or whatever. And this generates market for the movie, right? So, like, this is why the villain is white. And I don't think, like, we're going to see a villain that's a person of color for a long while. But you know, I can overlook this. It's fine. You know, I like feeling evil. Like, I like feeling a little bit edgy. I like putting the fear into the Disney Corporation because I exist. So, it's okay, you know, that is fine. But now, the other themes are interesting. Because usually, like, these stories for children are not just supposed to be entertainment, but they're supposed to give you a valuable lesson in life, right? Like, if you go in the past and you look how stories were made, you look at Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood and all of these, they were initially made for adults, believe it or not. Like, Sleeping Beauty and all of those were initially tales that adults shared amongst each other, and they had a moral value. Like, they had, like, for example, with Little Red Riding Hood is for women not to trust strangers, right? Because if you trust strangers, you can end up... in the initial tale, by the way, Little Red Riding Hood actually got raped. So, like, that was the moral of the story, and there's no happy ending in the original one. Like, if you look at the origins of many of these tales, they're incredibly brutal, they're incredibly gory, they have themes of rape. Like, for example, Sleeping Beauty in the original, she actually gets raped by a king while she's asleep, and it's the pains of childbirth that wakes her up. So these stories were incredibly gruesome, right? And it was usually like adults would share among each other, but then they started getting shared with children. And after kids, they started becoming mainstream with Disney, and obviously they were really watered down. But like, the point is, like, what remained was the moral lesson, right? Like, all of them had a moral lesson. So you look at the plot of this one, and what is the moral lesson? Well, apparently there's this king in a magical kingdom. And he is very narcissistic and self-obsessed. Like, he's got, like, this scene where he goes, like, yes, of course I'm gorgeous, or something like that. You know, just cringe. And people give wishes to him. So like, the commoners, they present the king with these wishes, and the king then gets to fulfill them. Now, the main character is a person of color, which is fine, you know, like, again, they're not race swapping a character, they're creating actually something new, so I'm not against it. But like, okay, so she's a person of color fighting against the strong white patriarchal figure. But like, her fight doesn't make any sense because she is outraged that the king doesn't fulfill the wishes of everybody. Right? So like, this king, which has the power to fulfill some wishes, doesn't fulfill the wishes of everybody, and because of that, there is no equity. Right? So because there is no equity, this is the conflict. And it's such an immature and childish notion. Like, if anything, you should teach your children that no, like, life is not fair and not everybody deserves to have their wishes granted. I mean, there are some bad people in the kingdom, obviously, right? Like, would you fulfill the wishes of a rapist or a mugger or a thug? And sometimes people may have wishes that, even though they sound good, in reality, they might not be good. Or what if you have like two wishes that conflict with each other? Like, what if there is a job application and two people want to get the job? Like, one person is not going to get it. There may be vindictive wishes, so on and so forth. So like, the idea that everybody needs to have their wish fulfilled is a dystopian society. It's not realistic. Like, if I were to have a kid, I would teach him that. It is actually not good for everyone to have all their wishes granted. Like, sometimes you can have a selfish wish, other times you can have a wish that hurts other people, right? Like, even if you have a child, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to constantly coddle him and maintain him into a fantasy world. You have to start to slowly introduce certain harsh realities of life, certain harsh truths, which is the fact that, no, like, not everybody gets to have their wish fulfilled. Some wishes are better than others, and even then, why should the king fulfill your wish? Like, why can't people fulfill their own wishes? Now, the movie is not out yet. We don't know if this theme is going to be tackled. We don't know if it's going to be tackled well. I have a feeling that it's going to be a balance. So maybe, like, this movie is going to tackle this interesting question in a fulfilling manner, because apparently what happens is that this hero, this protagonist, makes a wish upon a star, and she basically now has the power to grant wishes as well using the fallen star, and she's going to come into conflict with the king because now she can grant wishes as well. So basically there's like this power struggle between her and the king. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. But I'm not holding my breath, right? Like, nothing the king does is evil. Like, if the king has the power to grant wishes and he chooses not to grant them to everybody, then that doesn't necessarily make him evil. And as I can see here, most of the people in this town are actually happy under the king's rulership. Like, they don't seem oppressed. They don't seem to be suffering. They don't seem to have any plights. But again, it's like the same thing that we noticed with Barbie, right? Like, everyone is happy, but it's the activist or the main character or whatever who's unsatisfied, and she has to indoctrinate people into being unhappy. Right? It's like open people's eyes to the injustices, if you will. But anyway, right, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the comment section. Take care.